time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
And welcome back to another round of Brandy. Today is all about rebrands and the power that not only a rebrand brings to the confidence of the organization or the team or even the owner, but actually what it triggers in your audience and the special opportunity that your business gets when you do a rebrand.
Yeah, whether it's a redo or a reface, it's, and not to lean in with a pun to the RE of rebrand, but it is not primarily what we're going to be talking about. Is it's a time for a reappraisal of the brand, or a reassessment, a realignment, or reaffirming the audience. And basically what those components I just mentioned, that's all on the audience's side of things, because they're the ones that when they see a visual rebrand, in essence, when a brand gives itself a visual makeover, it calls its attention to itself. And the first question that the audience is asking is, first of all, is it a good or bad, right? How's the audience receiving the makeover? But what is it signaling to them? And a lot of times that is a time when it's almost like, okay, you've got the audience's attention. Now you need to see, they're waiting to see what the brand's going to do next. And that's going to make them want to reassess it, reevaluate it, reaffirm, right? Their love for it, or their relationship with the brand, and a reappraisal, like much like a piece of property, right, Reilly?
Yeah, and what I like about kind of highlighting this is that I feel like Scott said, it's from the audience's perspective, because when you rebrand, let's say you do a full rebrand, you have new packaging or new signage or a new billboard or something, and the audience can remember your name. They may recognize some of the elements that you have or the imagery, but then the rebrand actually creates this gap where what they thought you were, the meaning, how they defined you before, what they're familiar with, what they kind of even assumed about you, now there's this gap. And as humans, we're always looking for information. We're trying to fill these gaps and make kind of predictive conclusions. And that's where we get assumptions and we get biases and all these things. But even with brands, we do that as well, where we try to fill in these gaps. And so when that happens, where a rebrand goes, oh wait, there's something different here, that difference creates this gap. And nature always fills voids. And so when that void is there, then your audience stops and goes, wait a second, what's different here? What does that mean? How do I redefine this? How do I fill in that gap with this new information and then come to my new understanding of what this is? And that's that huge opportunity for businesses to, either reignite that fire or reintroduce themselves, or even, redefine what they mean to the audience. And that, is what you see in positioning pivots and all those kinds of things that come along with rebranding.
Yeah, I mean, we had an episode a little while back about rebranding and whether to do it or not, because it's for Reilly and I, it's like it's the crux of the business. It's the crux of what we do, but it's also something that should be done at the right time and for the right reasons. And so one of the primary reasons a lot of times businesses, particularly small businesses, will rebrand is just out of boredom. They feel like, I just need some more excitement in the, maybe it's their business is getting monotonous. Maybe they feel like it's getting stale. And so they just want to rebrand. And if you do that first component and leave that gap, but then don't fill it, aren't anticipating and strategically planning how to fill that void created by that reinvention to the audience, that's further proof why that's not a good reason to rebrand, is if you're just bored. You've always got to be doing it because you're setting your sights on a slightly different horizon line, or you're doing a complete pivot, or you're reinventing what the business is and how it serves, because maybe your market sector that you're in has evolved or changed drastically due to technology or competition, or no longer need. Like, I remember my dad, generations before us, I've always talked about there's two different industries that if you want to invest in an industry or open up a business, one that will last the test of time, that will always be around, has been headstones and tires. I've always heard that. I don't know why, but it makes sense, right? There's always going to be, like, people are always going to die. There's always going to be funerals. There's always headstones, right? If you make headstones, you're always going to be in business. But hypothetical, we're I think very, very close to seeing the day and age when automobiles are no longer touching the ground and are purely hovercrafts. Therefore, guess what? The tire industry is going to have to completely pivot and change. And maybe one day we're going to be disposing of bodies no longer the way we used to, and with technology and
or taxidermy.
Yeah, exactly. Or, no, actually have your conscious transferred to AI.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, and then you'll be in
your own chat.
You'll be in a Tesla droids as some
Flying around.
Yeah. But bottom line, I guess what I'm saying is that unless you have those things going on, and these are the needs to rebrand, to reinvent yourself, and fill that gap.
Right, and what I also like about rebrands is that so once someone notices the difference, there creates that gap and that void where they go, oh, wait a second, something's different here. I need to reassess. I need to look at this again. Then there actually is a moment. It's just like if I said, if you buy a red car or something, or a certain brand of a car, and you start seeing that car everywhere, you start seeing that color, or you start seeing that type of car everywhere. And that's called like a frequency bias, where once you kind of acquire something or note it, then you start seeing it more often because your brain just kind of starts highlighting it more. So same thing with like a rebrand, is that when one of your favorite brands rebrand, you start noticing that in places. So you actually, the prioritization of noticing that brand almost goes up in your head, and you go, oh, look how they're doing their packaging different now, or look how they did their sign or that ad or their social media, and you start seeing those things. And from Scott and I, our perspective of being in marketing and brand and all that, we note it a little differently, but the consumer, they note it as well, and they're seeing those things, and that's information they're taking in, and it's adding, like we always talk about, it's like that perception of your business creates the brand.
Yeah.
And they're creating that kind of almost automatically. And so this new information that you're putting forth with the rebrand is a huge opportunity, because they're trying to fill that void. They're trying to go, oh wait, my definition of this business, my perception, aka the brand, is different because they're revealing a different, kind of identity to me. So I need to redefine this. I have to figure out what the meaning is. And you're putting forth those materials and the brand messaging and imagery to fill that gap.
And what effect is that going to have on their salience?
Yeah, exactly. Is that then, like Scott said, is that whether you are pivoting or you're hunkering down further down a certain niche, you can really increase that salience by going, okay, we're going to signal even harder at this certain audience or this even smaller segment, or to the new, kind of pivot towards that different audience. You can start highlighting what's important to them. And then once they start filling that gap and go, oh, wow, brand X or whatever is actually, they just hit the nail on the head with one of my top concerns or one of my aspirations. And wow, I need to like rethink this brand. I might actually like them now,
Yeah. And the time of the way, just even this morning, I noticed, knowing we were going to kind of record this podcast and what we were going to be talking about, but a big rebrand that just dropped is Mountain Dew. Just rebranded their visual logo, their cans, everything. And it's really interesting because for a while they have been, their name, even though it's been Mountain Dew, it on their can and on their visual brand, it's MTN Dew. So they shortened Mountain, and it's Mountain Dew. And they did this back in the 90s. And the way it became very sharp and extreme edged vibe, and they started it was like extreme sports, like X Games and all this stuff, and it became synonymous with this, the high caffeine soda. It was really tailored in, locked into the teenager crowd and the young adult crowd. Mountain Dew started doing things like creating Baja Blast in conjunction with Taco Bell, so that they were solidifying their market space in that same lane.
Yeah.
But they've always had this very aggressive extreme sport vibe. And the new brand is much tamer, much more reminiscent of the visual brand and name look of the logo, like I remember back in the 70s and 80s, and before its more aggressive turn in the 90s. But it's now embracing that again, and they've brought back, even within the Mountain Dew, there's a little leaf over the eye. There's a established 1948. So they're clearly starting to lean back into their heritage roots. Mm-hmm. Their cans and their packaging look much more like a forest. Like, it reminds me of something out of the Pacific Northwest, like something out of Portland or something, where it's just got this foresty vibe. They're really leaning into the emphasis is on the mountain now. And it'll be curious. I'm very curious, right? Just like we were talking about signaling with the audience. So I do like Mountain Dew every now and then. So I'm part of their audience. Yeah. So I've just seen a rebrand. They've gotten my attention. Uh-huh. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, which is what is the brand going to do next to help me understand who they are now, who they're going after, and if am I still part of that crowd?
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And again, because it's not just our association with a brand goes beyond just simply using or consuming their product or service.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the business component. Me drinking Mountain Dew is a transaction. I purchased a Mountain Dew. I'm drinking Mountain Dew. That's the transaction. Right. That's the business side of things. My association with Mountain Dew and its presence in my life or my lifestyle, right? That's the brand. Yeah. So now I'm left going, okay, Mountain Dew, what do you like? Are you going more after the slightly older, like the hipster, like young family
the
dad
IPA
guy? Yeah, right. Like, is that the vibe you're going for now? I don't know. They've got the attention, but now I want to see what, because if they're still going after the extreme, the same exact market space and lane they've always been in, I think the rebrand's a miss.
Yeah.
But it's signaling to me that there is going to be some shift.
Right. And to your point, like you said, it's like you're going to reassess it and go, does this still match my identity and how I view them and how, ultimately makes you feel beyond the transaction of just buying a soda, how it makes you feel when you're enjoying it. And then that also goes into how, the rest of our audience feels. And that's what Dave Norton, he writes about like situational marketing and such. And he talks about how people, based off someone's beliefs, they create their life systems, and brands come along and help people conduct their life systems. So how you go about your life, what car you drive, what type of car you drive, all those different things. There's all these situations in our lives, and how our life systems are constructed are based off of our personal beliefs. And so the same thing goes for Mountain Dew and soda is like this caffeinated soda that positioned so well in that market with X Games and extreme sports and
extreme flavor, like tons of flavors,
super flavorful, super sugary. And that belief of someone who enjoys that, right? Someone who's on their BMX bike or they're gaming late at night or whatever it is, like that, then that's their life system, or their system in their life. And Mountain Dew helped them accomplish that. It was part of their identity of going, oh yeah, I'll just pick a Mountain Dew from the grocery store or whatever and drink that tonight or have it at my Taco Bell. Yeah. And now it's not signaling that. So just like Scott's reassessing it, even when I saw it, I'm like, how do I feel about this? Beyond just the design aspect of it, it's like, how does this actually make me feel of my perception of Mountain Dew that's been for decades, literally.
Because we see, I mean, as a designer, I see rebrands all the time, and a lot of time, and unfortunately, I'm cursed with the eyes that like picking all these little details. I go, I would have done something different, or this execution, or this choice in the line, the direction of the line work right here. I'm not crazy about. So I analyze it super hyper focused. But at the end of the day, a rebrand is a rebrand, and I have no control of it. My now natural response is as the consumer, and that is what I'm assessing with it. So what we're talking about is more of what is the this rebrand for them, what's the impact going to have and what's the effect it's going to have. And I'm just really curious to see what unfolds in the next couple months as they start rolling this out and you start seeing it on the shelf and you start seeing ads and you see even its association with Taco Bell and does their new vibe and everything match with Taco Bell's vibe when they are having their membership only Baja Blast gelatos or whatever it is that they're doing right now, which is a great, smart. And we may save another episode just totally about, collaborative brands working together to further their strength. But I think above all these things, and what Reilly brought up was that it creates opportunity, right? You have that gap. And I know when we first talking about this topic, you had a great analogy of equating it to like a piece of property, a home that you are going to have reappraised on the market. And a lot of times that means improving it, doing things to, maybe do an add-on, do something that's more relevant to, build out a more modern kitchen that's going to be appealing to the current younger, market, if that's what they're shopping for, whatever it is, so that you have an increased value. And bottom line, I think that's what the point of all this is really to do a rebrand so that you have increased value. That's
Yeah.
Am I right? That's
exactly.
the ultimate byproduct that you're wanting of doing any type of rebrand is to boost your value, like a home,
Right.
And a remodel and reappraisal.
Any reappraisal is like about, okay, the value is here. What you're bringing to the market was here, whether that is a rental property, which to me is a business, or your actual business. What value you're bringing to the market? How is that being appraised? And then when you do these improvements, how is that now reappraised and based off the value you're bringing to the market? So just like with a home, let's say you get a home that you remodel and you're going to put it on the market. You look at its neighborhood, you look at what's going on in the city in these different regions and go, okay, what's the potential here for rent? What's the potential here for people moving in? What's the demand? Then you might go, okay, it is younger audience that's moving in here, younger families. They may appreciate, a nicer kitchen, or you start doing different improvements that appease that certain crowd. So then when you go through the rebrand or, like the remodel process, you're deliberately making these decisions to appease that certain target audience. So then when it does go back on the market, it can be reappraised at a higher value. And of course, like with homes, you most likely are dealing with banks, and that's how it works, is that they reappraise and go, okay, it was a single family home before, now you're turning it into a rental. So now it has income, and now it has actual growth and potential like a business, and they reappraise it at a different rate based off that. And so depending on now what kind of rent, really the pricing power it can demand, then that helps with the reappraisal. And the same thing goes for your business. Is if you have a certain brand and it looks a little, not put together, it's not polished, your pricing power can only be so much. And so you're either gonna have to charge really less or sell a whole bunch, and then the desire is not going to be there because the brand's just not appealing. So when you increase based off of that rebrand, it's like that remodel, is that now you are not only more desirable to the audience because you made strategic decisions, but now your pricing power goes up as well. And so it's a win-win on both sides of the equation. And just like, when you think about it in those very, very, financial kind of construct of a reappraisal, it's like, that's what it is. You have to see it as, it's essentially a remodel for a rental property.
Yeah. We've talked about this in our book and in I think an older podcast when we talk about like launching a rebrand, right? You don't want to slowly roll it out with different components. Well, I still have letterhead, another year's worth, so I'll change that when it's down the time and all that stuff. Because all of that leads to the impact, the splash zone, right? Like tossing a little pebble into a pond. You're going to get a bigger impact when it's strategically timed with maybe a new service or new product offer you're rolling out, because it's in sync. In other words, if you were to rebrand, but then you've got something new rolling out 6 months, that's delayed, right? The audience is kind of, okay, what's changed? And, wait around for a little while. Okay. I guess maybe that's what's changed. Or the change happens first, and the customer's disoriented because now all of a sudden you haven't created the gap first, and you're forcing into their ecosystem, their mental and emotional ecosystem with the brand, that you're trying to squeeze something else into it.
Yep. Yeah.
And so those are times that you want to capitalize. So it's not just a matter of what you're doing, but when you do it as well. I think if you're having an alignment of new stuff, if your brand or if your business is evolving slightly or pivoting, and the brand needs to pivot with that, timing that with the inner workings of the business makes the most sense, because then you're getting the biggest splash, the most efficiency of connecting with the audience and filling in that gap and maintaining that connection. Yeah. Right? Yep. And really this kind of moment of like pause, unplug, and the audience replugging in with the brand, which is to me exactly what that's a good a mental illustration for me, is like taking an electric plug and unplugging it, right? Yeah. And then you're plugging it back in, resetting, same thing as that, but it's ideally you want it done efficiently so that the audience doesn't even notice.
Well, in the rebrand, it can be just like we talked about in Theater of Brand on that past episode. It in of itself can be a performance. So just as much as the curtains close and then reopen, and it's a new setup, a new scene, all these things where then the audience is like their breath's taken away. And so then that's that opportunity. And like Scott's saying, is like that can be lost. And the amazing thing about it is that going back to like that gap that you can create, you do want that to be very deliberate, and you want that to be very like you want that contrast there where someone, it gets turned off or the curtains close and it opens back up and there's noticeable difference, because that gap, the more stark and the more contrast you have in that, is that actually when that missing information is there, they've done studies where it actually creates a dopamine response. So dopamine is typically referred to as like the reward molecule, but they actually like understand now is that dopamine actually drives you to do something. So that's why people get addicted to drugs or get addicted to working out, is that dopamine is what gets you up and goes, I need to go for a run, or I need to go work out or whatever. And so when you do have that gap, dopamine kicks in and goes, find that information, figure out what the difference is. And even Scott demonstrated this earlier when he said, I can't wait to see what products are going to roll out with or how they're going to roll this out, right? He's already starting to like almost salivate over, okay, Mountain Dew rebranded, but nothing else has changed, right? But what are they going to do? Because it could be very exciting what they're doing. They could be on, wow, this is a new era for the soda, and it could even get much better for the brand.
It could be all probiotic. It could be natural ingredient. Who knows? I mean, they could make a complete market shift transition, or they may not and just change their packaging and still be trying to appeal to the same audience, right? Yep. But I feel like currently, visually, they're going to probably lose some of the extreme crowd just because it's different. It's not. And
unfortunately, Pepsi, who owns Mountain Dew, has that in their history, what they did with Tropicana. And they had that that problem where they rebranded Tropicana, the orange juice, repackaged it, spent $35 million on the rebrand and the repackaging and getting new inventory out there, and then it flopped.
Created audience confusion.
It dropped the ball on so many levels that in 2 months in sales they lost $30 million. So altogether that was like a $60 to $70 million bath that they took, and then they went back to old Tropicana packaging. And so you want that contrast in the difference, but you don't want to make the Pepsi mistake with Tropicana of going too disconnected. They completely severed the ties with Tropicana. If I had, you think of the Tropicana carton, you'd probably think of the orange with the straw in it, and they got rid of that. And that was a huge, huge mistake. But when you do rebrand, you do want to keep those very strong connections that help the audience and the viewer be able to transfer over and be able to kind of make that bridge or that gap. You don't always want to leave them with a huge like, okay, now here's a huge chasm of a rebrand, now figure it out, but you kind of want to help them bridge over. And that's really what they kind of messed up there. So it's like when you do that, yes, make it into a presentable experience for them, but also lead them and guide them with the rebrand.
Yeah. Especially, again, and there's so many levels of rebrand, right? It could be a slight, Bose just rebrand. Only the most discerning eyes can pick up even the slightest. There's one obvious minor change, but one that's so like, what was the point? And then the other two that I picked up are so like, only a designer would be able to look and go, oh, that curve is slightly different or whatever, but it's nothing. At first glance, it looks like they're the exact same logo. Or there's ones that are complete overhaul. And again, it's one of those things of I think like those big changes, you brought it again, going back to theater, Brandon, made me think of almost like, when a movie theater drops like a trailer, a teaser poster, right? It could be June 2025 and it's an object or just, or whatever, or just the name. And it's like a teaser, and it allows the audience to know, oh, this is coming. Yeah. I think brands that are doing major visual overhaul if there's some way they can create a shift and almost announce and prep the audience for that. But whereas the subtle ones you could slip in and the audience may or may not notice, but that minor tweak is rehoning and refining their impression, and the salience they have with the brand. But if it's major, and it comes unannounced, like it's an overnight change, sometimes it can be off-putting. Right. Like, wait, what? Wait. Yeah. Because you're going down the aisle, you're looking for the exact same package. You always get your product. Let's say, again, if we're talking about a product on the shelf, and you know where it's at, and you go, and then all of a sudden it's changed everything. You're like, what? Oh, okay, I guess, this is the same. But then you're left questioning, going, wait, this is a whole new product? Is this the exact same product, and just the box looks different? Like, what about it is different or new?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And when you are doing a rebrand.
A recent example I had to that is that I buy these, they're like supplements, but they're trace mineral drops that you put in your water, and they add minerals back in your water and stuff. because I'm weird. But then
And lots of bromine.
and they changed not only the label design, but they also changed the vessel. So the bottle's completely different. And so even shopping online, I was confused and I had to spend extra time going, okay, is this the same product that I normally buy, right? But as the consumer, it was on me to, okay, this is all the same information, okay, and really, and even it didn't catch my eye at first because I knew what I was looking for. And again, it did create that gap, but there was that loss of, because I think they shrunk down their logo or something as well. So my eye had no kind of wayfinding signs. I was like lost and trying to find, like, there's no signage for me to follow and go, okay, oh yep, this is still home. This is how I get home. Like, and so it was a little bit of that, but the new vessel is much better and everything, but it's still, it was a little abrupt.
Yeah. I think the responsibility is on the brand to communicate in some form or fashion, some way to help walk the audience through that transition, whatever it is. It shouldn't be on the shoulders of the audience to just figure it out. Otherwise, I mean, that can be the attitude, but then you run the risk of losing some audience in the hopes of gaining some new.
And it makes me even think of which has been done, for years and years and years, of when you do see a product on the shelf and it's like new look, same great taste, or same great, flavor or ingredients or whatever. And there is that, okay, it helps the consumer with that step. And, hopefully you don't have to do that. But to me, it is a simple solution that does help with that bridging that I'm talking about, with that gap. It helps the customer have that, there's security in that. They're not uncertain anymore.
Or it could be reinforce on if your product has coupons or print cloud. Like if we're staying the idea of like, oh, like if they're Triscuits or something, and if Triscuit's going to rebrand, but let me know. In fact, actually, Triscuit did recently rebrand. They went to this like electric navy blue. It's a really interesting blue. I actually kind of like it. It's really, their boxes are really jumping off the shelf. But again, it was one of those things. At first, I had to stop and look and go, wait, is this a new flavor? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And that pause, as opposed to if there was some commercials, right? Couple months, again, that idea of, hey, we're going to part the curtain and we're going to have a performance, and the audience is anticipating that prior to the performance, right? You're setting them up.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some print advertising. Maybe there's stuff that's, reinforcing the new look. So when the consumer actually finally it rolls out and it's on the shelf, they're already prepared for it.
Yeah. And lastly, I have a good example that I wanted to share about a brand that I already liked, and then they honed in and went even... They hunkered down even more in their niche and became even more like, oh man, now I really, really like them.
Now they've really got you by the cojones.
And it's MailChimp, right? And so MailChimp has always been newsletter staple and just like cornerstone for that sector. And then Collins rebranded them. This is a while ago now, but they rebranded them and they leaned into the MailChimp personality. Because MailChimp was always funky with its little mailman that's a monkey.
The monkey. Yeah.
And it was
more
fun,
into the monkey
and
vibe.
he's like a fun little mascot. And so they leaned more into that, brought in this really banana yellow, and just like, it was so much fun because they had a lot of blues and stuff before then, but the yellow is like very fun, and the type they had for it and everything. And just like even with their marketing, they upped that where it just became more like monkey business. And and it just made me like the brand even more, and everything through and through, their illustration style, everything matched that. So much so that I think Intuit then bought them a couple years later, but and they kind of botched a couple things. But anyways, but they overall, like the brand, I was thinking of examples of just like that one, I liked them, and then they were so confident in knowing who they were, and they had that clarity that it actually made me go, okay, now I love them even more now. And I feel like, I don't know, I can't really think of any other brands that, as of recent, who have done that.
No, but it's kind of like, to me, it signals to a particular audience that's resonating with. It's kind of like, as a brand, we're even more all in. Like and I think a lot of times that's an evolution. I think for a brand, sometimes when you have a new brand that comes out on the market, and then they're not trying to shotgun blast appeal to everybody, because you can't. If you're trying to appeal to everybody, you're going to appeal to nobody. But in their shortened shotgun blast, medium barrel shotgun, not a sawed-off shotgun, so it's like a wide blast. So you get medium, right? More focus is going to be a long barrel, but a medium barrel. And when a brand does that, but then over time, they start finding who they resonate the most with. Of in that audience, and then for them to refresh their brand or give the brand a facelift that just kind of it leans even more with that brand. It's almost like they're kind of going, hey, we're all in, right? It's almost like backwards engineering with like how we were talking about the Mountain Dew. If they found like, oh, Mountain Dew's accessible, blah, 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 but man, the BMX, teenage BMX riders and guys into skateboarding and surfing really love it. And so now it's like, oh, hey, okay, let's start partnering with X Games. Let's start sponsoring these. All of a sudden they're paying corporate sponsorship to all these different things, but it's their audience.
Yeah.
And you see how, and it's almost like it's kind of saying, okay, we're going to get all in with this particular. They refine their audience and they go more all in. And for that receiving audience, that creates a more strengthening bond because the audience is saying, yeah, you get me.
Yeah. I think of even like some of our hometown heroes around here, like Firestone Walker with 805 Beer. I feel like we've seen that thing since birth, and 805 Beer has only more and more, they keep really focusing of that brand with the certain sports they're associated with. And now they're doing cool interviews with athletes and just things like that where they've captured this vibe and this theme, and then they haven't tried to widen that and appeal to more. They're just getting more and more grittier and more like into that vibe. And like to them, it's like every chapter, it seems like they're just getting more focus. And that really does, I think that's why they're so successful. Really.
Yeah, exactly. They're maintaining that focus, which we've talked about again, basics of brand, clarity, right? Focus, consistency, and creativity. The keys to successful brand.
Yeah, and that really, when you do think about reappraising, it's like look at the market, look at what they're going to find valuable, what value you're bringing to the market, and then how do you, even like the remodeling, it's like how do you rebrand to then deliberately make, an effort to bring that value to market. Yeah. And create that gap and really just stand out. So, that's one of the surprising, powerful, kind of outcomes of rebranding is just the trigger that it creates in your audience of them going, okay, I need to reassess this. I need to fill this gap with this new information I just received. Now, what is that going to be, right? And they start trying to define that and come up with a new meaning and therefore their perception. And so it's a huge opportunity for you as a business, and something not to really discount in any way. But thank you again for tuning in for another episode of Brandy.
And until next time, cheers.